Hello, who's here this evening? Got two watchers. Make yourself known. So I've gone live actually because I was live streaming earlier on and a bit of a family emergency happened. So for that reason, I had to come off and quite abruptly actually. So if you're from the stream earlier on, I sincerely apologise, but sometimes family matters they take priority over YouTube, I suppose. So who's here in the hood, in the house tonight? And besides that, I came online again, streaming because a couple of people sort of some really awkward situation with my live streaming. Is that I'll keep saying this, but different time zones around the world, and I can't always be streaming whilst we're in different parts of the world. So it's really awkward to judge a really good time to be live streaming like this. So uh, hey Darius, how you doing? I don't think I've had the pleasure of having you in my stream before, so hello and welcome to the Just Jamie Let's Talk Retro Emulation stream. So, yeah, this is going to be a bit of a continuation of the stream a couple of hours ago. Like I said, family emergency, and that's going to take priority over streaming, I'm afraid. But everything's been resolved now, and I am back. I am back with a vengeance. Never await this late. Yeah, so I've said it before, but American people who watches my streams then I do these around 2 in the morning. And earlier on, when I did the original stream, it was around, let's see, 6 o'clock, at past six, I started. Around 45 minutes in, family emergency, I had to go. But at the time, it was a nice audience, a good lot of viewers. And I think I'm going to actually stream around 6 o'clock more often, actually. So, yeah, where is everyone this evening? I say this evening because it's 11:30 now in the UK, 11:30 p.m. that is. So, yeah, if you've not seen today's setup guide, I uploaded a setup guide for a very awesome Sega Model 2 emulator, which um, I had the blessing of a creator, which is provided some configuration files with the emulator, uh, warped polygon. So if you're into arcade gaming, specifically Sega Model 2, which is some of the absolute best arcade games of the say 90s, early 2000s, check that one out. If you're into Sega Model 3, check out yesterday's Sega Model 3 Supermodel Assistant Emulator Setup Guide. Absolutely superb. A really, really nice setup I did yesterday. So, who else have we got here then? Universal Friend. Hey, what's up? Yo, Universal Friends. Again, just like Darius, I don't actually think I've known you to be in a live stream before, so welcome to the channel. Never leave. So, whereabouts are you two from, Darius? You know what? Your surname reminds me. In fact, I had a friend in college years ago with your same surname, actually. Came from a place called Wickwar. Yeah, Wickwar. Okay, Sindon is not working out the box. I've no idea. Now, hello, hi base. How you doing, man? So Cinder, we're going back into the light gun territory now. Like I was explaining earlier on, in terms of light gun support with my setup guides, I don't actually own a light gun. Reason being is I'm not really a light gun person. I'm planning to get one, uh, but really, it literally just be for a couple of setup guides just to help a couple of people like yourselves out with light guns. So obviously retrobat, batocera, pretty much all of those front ends are going to support light gun support. I don't have one, so I can't do it. But this is why I asked for support in my channel, because it's things like this I could really do with to give you setup guides. So I'm going to leave it here, like I always do through live streams. This is my PayPal. If anyone wants to support me in order to buy things like this, in order to give you setup guides that you're always asking for, I invest in the channel. I use PayPal donations to buy this and that so I can provide setup guides. It's that simple. Obviously, me uploading video setup guides don't particularly get paid. Too great for it. So things like that, it helps. It really helps my channel in big ways when people donate and support what I do. It just means I'll get bigger, and it means you, as the audience, are going to get more content that you're actually wanting. Uh, so yeah, Syndom works with Batocera. Most of these front end systems do. So, Cedric Scott, if you want to support me, please, please, please make that donation to the PayPal address I've just linked in there. I'm always really grateful for support donations. I truly am really grateful for it. Like I've been saying, it just helps my channel reach a bigger audience, and it, like I say, it just gives you what you want, what you're asking for. And light gun support, I get asked about quite a bit. So, yeah, so yeah, we got a few new viewers tonight watching this. Cedric Scott, I think I'm pronouncing that right. And we also got Vexus Dragon again. Nice to see some new people in here. So hello to everyone. Hello. So, yeah, because I've not seen any of you before in my stream, let me just give you a heads up. What we do in these Let's Talk emulation streams is quite literally ask what you're wanting from me as a channel, to discover new emulation platforms, to find out what it is you actually want from the channel. Obviously, the channel we've got, is as good as you want it to be. Yo, Rascast, another one, another person who I don't know from my live streams. It's really nice and refreshing to see so many new people. Really good stuff. Okay, have you seen the AG600 cheap Android box running Amiga Pi? I'm not familiar with that one actually, Darius. The reason why is that the world of Android boxes, which one do you go for? There's so many out there now. In terms of Amiga Pi, I own a. In terms of Amiga Pi, I've got the best thing out there, quite likely the best thing, which is the Raspberry Pi 400. Now, you could consider the Raspberry Pi 400 is pretty much like a Commodore 64, or even some sort of spiritual successor of that micro era. So these, without a doubt, are absolutely superb for Amiga Pi, things like that. And you're right, Darius. I don't actually think I've owned an Android box in my life. I don't think I have, and the reason being is because either I've got a computer like what I'm streaming on right now, which are normally pretty good enough to be running, say, Amiga or things like that. And I've also got bits and pieces like the Pi 400, which is very good for Amiga for that nostalgic experience. Extremely good, and the Pi 400s, although they're a good few years old now, they're still pretty powerful to run a lot of emulators. Loving RetroPie with Dreamcast emulator. Let's see. RetroPie, that's got support for Dreamcast by Flycast, I'm pretty sure. You know, in terms of emulation and new platforms, I'm always going to show this off because really, this is my pride and joy. This is um, the C64. This is obviously the next one after the C64 Mini. Now, anyone that knows me, and I don't think I've talked to many of you before, this is my absolute pride and joy. I'm a big C64 freak, and I've covered modern 64 gaming loads on my channel. I can't get enough of Commodore stuff. Something else I'm really chuffed with having. is the Amiga 500 Mini or the A500 by Retro Games Limited. It's absolutely superb, especially for Pi Amiga or the Amiga Game Selector. Okay, because I plan on getting a mini gaming PC and want to know which front end you prefer. Launchbox batocera. Now, um, Cedric, in terms of which one is going to be the best for you, really, it comes down to what issue you want. I mean, batocera, as you know, is a free front end, absolutely free. Most cheaper, sort of around 100, £150 computer, very basic. You don't need anything super duper in most cases. Will run batocera, most of the systems on it. Launchbox, on the other hand, runs with Windows pretty much. Batocera boots independently. Launchbox, you've got to pay for, obviously, for premium big box edition. Um, Plus, you need Windows. So, two kettles of fish really with Launchbox or Batocera. Personally, my preference is Launchbox, and I pay for the premium version of that because I like it. Simple as that. It's very customizable. You can pretty much emulate anything on Launchbox, including even turning Launchbox into a jukebox. Things like Batocera, great systems, really nice front ends for free, absolutely superb. But in terms of customization, not so much with Batocera or even retrobat. So Launchbox, without a doubt, my personal choice that would be. Okay, let's take a look. So, Cedric, I'm trying to run games up to PS2 and PS3. Okay, so, in terms of PlayStation 3 emulation, PlayStation 2 can be emulated pretty well with nothing too over the top in terms of GPUs or CPUs. They're pretty easy to run, if I'm honest. RPCS 3, PlayStation 3 emulation, that's another kettle of fish. Uh, Pretty demanding. If you actually check on the RPCS 3 website, it'll give you hardware requirements on there, and you can see that you do need something pretty substantial to support PS3. The only reason I've done setup guides for PS3 is because I've got some PlayStation 3 games. I've got a PS3 Slim, but the good thing about emulation is upscaling and things like that. And that's the true beauty about emulation, is that you can advance things, whereas on the original hardware, not really so much. Something else about emulation is that hardware, we're talking 1980s, 1990s hardware, it's very old nowadays. That original hardware is not going to last forever, for all eternity. So this is the crucial part of emulation, is that it's going to continue for decades to come. Awesome stuff. Okay, so Raf's cast is a very unpopular opinion, and I'm actually going to say uh, well, technically, I'm going to say neither of those. So you've got the C64 bread box, which is the original 1982, and you've got the later C64C from 1985. Now, when I was a kid, the C64C was the original model, and as much as I love it, I'm actually going to say the C64G, that's a German model, is aesthetically, that's my favorite. The reason being is the C64G model was in the shape of a bread box, but it had the colours of the C model. So you kind of got both best of both worlds in that one. And the G model, it had updated components inside of it. So the motherboard on it was upgraded and sound chips had changed, that type of thing. So, all down to preference, really. Like I said, very unpopular opinion. Most people are into their bread bins. Me, likely 64 G model. So, if you're not familiar with the C64G, if I just go to Google Images, this is the C64G in all of its glory. Absolutely superb. So as you can see, it's in the shape of a bread bin, but it's got the colours of the C model. So uh, Now, I could even push it a little bit further for Commodore fans and actually say the SX64 is one of my favorites too. For those of you not knowing, the Commodore SX64 was literally the world's first portable computer. Pretty much looking back at it, SX64 today looks like sort of military hardware, but at the time it was portable. Even though it broke your back carrying that thing. Okay, so want to add Nintendo Switch to my Batocera 39 installation. Sounds pretty involved. Is it really that hard? No, no. I've not actually covered it, and the reason why is that you'll see a couple of setup guides for Switch on my channel. To be honest with you, I don't really like touching the Switch. The reason I first uploaded for retrobat, Yuzu at the time, was literally because it was a part of retrobat, and my ambition was to literally do every system for retrobat. Batocera, I've no experience with Switch, but if it's anything like retrobat, not really that hard. Just remember that Yuzu isn't updated anymore. I don't think you can even get it. So it's likely going to be Suyu, or at least on the next distribution of Batocera 40, Yuzu will likely be gone altogether, I'd say, and it will likely be Suyu. So, yeah, like I've been saying, it's lovely to see so many new people to the stream, and we are talking. Let's talk retro emulation. So, let's talk retro emulation. What's everyone's favorite computer or console? Someone asked me earlier on what was my first computer, Commodore 64, 1990, and my first console was a Nintendo Entertainment System or the NES 8-bit from 1985. Absolute superb times. And I was just talking to my son just now, funny enough, and I was actually saying to him what a great childhood I had, just top notch. Couldn't ask for anything better. Really awesome stuff. The Commodore VIC-20. Now, you know what? The C64 version I got, the Retro Games Limited Maxi version, that one's actually got VIC-20 emulation support. I've not used it. I know there's a fairly active community for Commodore VIC-20 games, but to be honest with you, as much as I appreciate the VIC-20, it's a little bit before my time. See, if you know your Commodore history, the VIC-20 was then taken over by the C64. Hey, no worries, Rev D. So, thank you very much. Thanks. I think I'm actually missing what people were saying there. Greeting and good evening, all, Jamie. Really enjoy the channel. Thanks for all the great videos. You know what, Rev D? It's a pleasure. I enjoy doing what I do, and it's nice that I'm really appreciated. It's really nice that people's actually taking their time to come to my streams. They're listening and they're learning from the videos I upload. So, really, thank you all for having faith in me. And one thing I'm known for is simplicity on my setup guide tutorials. So, is a lot of yous aware there's a lot of setup guides on YouTube, and a lot of it is very technical. Let's take Commodore Amiga for example. A lot of setups for WinUAE or even FSUA are just so unnecessary difficult. So I try my very best to simplify it because, just like a lot of you here, I was a beginner once with emulation. So for that reason, I put myself in people's shoes. Okay, so ZX Spectrum or ZX Spectrum, if you're an American person here now, absolutely awesome stuff. So, you know what? The really sad thing with ZX Spectrum is Clive Sinclair herself, absolute British mammoth back in the day in the 80s, a tyrant, in fact, of the computing industry, the British computing industry. And I just find it a real shame how no one's heard of him anymore. One of probably the finest inventors, probably one of the worst businessmen around. But in terms of innovation and evolution in technology, absolute phenomenal. And like I say, I just find it really, really awful how he's been forgotten about. And we got people like Bill Gates and stuff like that. In years to come, people remember that name. Interestingly, Bill Gates, Microsoft obviously, actually worked on the Commodore operating system. So there you go, a little bit of unuseful knowledge, I suppose, for people who didn't know that. So, yeah, thank you, Darius. Thank you. Like I say, we all know Amiga emulation. Most people knows who's tried it isn't particularly a nice system to set up. Um, I looked at WinUA for years and years and years and years, and it is complex. There's no doubt about it. So I do my best just to get you, all of you, the best setup guides and the easiest guides. But yeah, thanks for your support there. That's really awesome. Okay, George, will Launchbox be available for iOS system Apple? Not to my knowledge. I might be wrong, but it's not something I've looked into. But I do get updates from Launchbox. Like I said earlier on, I actually pay for Launchbox Big Box Premium, and they send me updates now and again. It's available on Android, and that's about it to my knowledge. But like I said, I could be wrong. And the Atari ST, interestingly, we was talking about this in earlier on stream, the Atari ST and Amiga war. So again, another bit of history for you. The Atari ST obviously came out, and the Amiga technically was this isn't going to be a great thing to say, but the Amiga was miles ahead, so much so when it released, pretty much of Andy Warhol and Debbie Harry, it was so ahead of its time, there wasn't much out for it because developers didn't know what to do with it. So when that time, the Atari ST had a monopoly. So yeah, obviously later on in life, the Amiga kind of overshadowed Atari ST from my understanding. But the ST was fantastic for MIDI. So something exactly. You know what? When I started looking into the world of emulation years ago, I started college. I think this was around 2004, 2005, I was at college and had a few friends, and one of them said to me, "You can play your Game Boy Advance games on a PC." And I was like, "What are you talking, man? This is madness. You can't do that." I investigated it. And this was the times of things like BearShare, whatever it was called, or LimeWire, those shady programs which would pretty much kill off your computer through viruses. And anyways, I looked into emulation. I was just blown away. So obviously, me being a person that I am and I love learning things, I get deeper into the world of emulation. And throughout, say, the last 20 years, it's been phenomenal. The improvements, RPCS3, PlayStation 3 emulation. It was known that the PlayStation 3 couldn't be emulated, and here we are. Supports a massive catalogue of PlayStation 3 games, and it gets better and better. So you're an old reverend, Rev D. Makes sense with your username. So yeah, good stuff. Good on you. Yeah, so to be honest with you, Ratscat, talking about the Amiga and ST wars, much like the C64 and the Spectrum wars of the 80s, the Spectrum was a cheaper computer to have for most British households in the 80s, whereas the C64 was a more premium. So I'd imagine the ST and Amiga had a similar clash in its day. Obviously, I was born in 1983. By 1990, I start having a memory, or even late 80s, a memory of things. But obviously, your first few years of life, you don't remember a great deal. But I got an interest in computers. To me, microcomputers over consoles any day of the week, uh, without a doubt. So yeah, I've always had an interest in the computers, that type of thing. Love the stuff. Okay, so we're looking at the Apple II game system and the Apple IIe. So George, you could be American. I mean, to my knowledge, the Apple II GS and the IIe were very much more of an American audience at the time. Here in Britain, during that era, we would have had C64, likely VIC-20, ZX Spectrum, in Amstrad as well, Amstrad CPC. There was a couple of oddities out there at the time, such as the Auric One. Um, but yeah, Apple, it had a minority audience here, but it wasn't a big deal like it would have been in the US. And aesthetically, the Apple IIe, what a superb looking computer. It was in the film Big with Tom Hanks that he was actually playing an Apple IIe, I think it was in that film at the beginning. Yeah, you know what, Rascast, the interesting thing now with MIDI and the Atari ST is that the odd thing is that the ST is known for music production MIDI. So to be honest with you, I don't agree that the Atari ST is anything that great. I might be biased because I'm a Commodore fan, but I truly think uh, the sounds on the Amiga and even the visuals were far ahead of the ST, like miles ahead. But like I said, very questionable or even a subjective opinion. But that's the way I look at it. So I suppose, if you was brought up with an Atari ST, you would likely have a biased opinion. Me, I've always been Commodore, so yeah, pretty biased really in that way. So let's talk more about what you'll want from the channel. Like I said earlier on in this stream, and earlier on stream before I disconnected through a family emergency, I've uploaded Sega Model 2 emulator today, which is a very, very good one. Yo, Shade, good to see you, my man. Uh, Yeah, so I uploaded Sega Model 2 emulator today, which has got the blessing of a very talented YouTuber, known as Warped Polygon. Warped Polygon, he's got some very interesting videos, and I used some of his work for today's Sega Model 2 emulator setup guide. Absolutely superb, really talented person. Yesterday, I did Sega Model 3 Supermodel Assistant, which is a very nice, almost graphical user interface for the Sega Model 3 Supermodel emulator. Cool, man. So, yeah, there we go. So we got some new, interesting couple of days worth really of emulation setups. Some really nice ones there for you to check out. Um, let's take a look. A couple of days ago, I uploaded GameX. Now, it seems that the general consensus is people was really appreciative towards the GameX setup I did. Some people found it overly confusing, which is understandable. GameX isn't a walk in the park. Quite likely where there's a lack of GameX tutorials on YouTube, who knows? And yesterday, I actually uploaded the Game X Arcade Edition, which is absolutely superb if you're planning on building an arcade cabinet. Okay, so Rev, I'm going to call you Reverend. Okay, let's have a bit more respect. so, Flash games in Batocera. Now, interestingly, I covered Flash games for retrobat. And to my astonishment, there really were some superb Flash games. So I covered it in Retrobat, but I've not covered it in Batocera. So what I'm going to do is do what I normally do and open up my videos to-do list. And I'm going to add to this. So what we are wanting is uh, I will get back into Batocera at some point. It's not too often I cover Batocera, but I understand it. I know how it works. It's just a case, literally, of uploading stuff. So we want Batocera flashing. Oddly enough, I'm pretty sure someone's requested that one before. And if it's anything like Retrobat, Flash isn't particularly that difficult to set up. Okay, so Pi 5. It would be lovely, Rasp, if I actually owned a Raspberry Pi 5. It would be nice one day. Like I said earlier on, I've got the Raspberry Pi 400. Pi 5, I not really got around to even looking at them. Obviously, they're an upgrade from the Pi 4. And I think it's standards, the memory on or the RAM on the Pi 5 is a major upgrade in its own right, even for a standard lower end Pi 5. So yeah, Rascast, if you're looking for Raspberry Pi limitations and how good they are for running all the retro games, I'd imagine there's plenty of videos on YouTube to show that, but like I say, I don't personally own one. Um, so in terms of the Pi 400, which is pretty much a Raspberry Pi 4 GB with a keyboard, um, they're not actually that bad. Okay, so something else which I'm constantly being asked is light gun games. I'm gonna make this on my list as well because light gun support is one of those things which every now and again people ask me for. I'm happy to do it, really happy to do light gun games. I'm not a light gun person myself. If it comes to a light gun game, personally, I'm happy just using the trusty old Xbox controller. Light gun seems to be a bit of a niche audience. Like I said, I don't own one, but Sindon is the way to go by the seams of what most people are telling me on streams. Okay, so Reverends, what I'm going to do is take a look at batocera Flash games. Now, I'm good for my words. Literally, the Game X setup guide I did a couple of days ago. Literally, someone asked me for it, and I did what they asked. The channel we've got, is as good as what you make it. So by getting a little bit of feedback off of people here is good. Like I say, the channel is only what you're going to make it. So yeah, I think light gun is a way to go, but I don't own a light gun, and this is why I always say please donate, support the channel, and things like this I can buy and enhance the channel to make it beefier, than what it already is, how it's getting. I mean, I look at my subscribers sometimes. I'm on 17,314 subscribers today. Literally, just over a year ago, I was celebrating because I had 100 subscribers. Uh, so obviously, people was liking my content. Cool, man. Yeah, you know what, Shade? Duck Hunt was one of the early NES games that I played as a kid, and it blew me and it blew my mum away at the time. I always remember Mama saying with that game in particular, sometimes you've got these childhood memories, and that Duck Hunt game on NES was actually one of them. I was in my old bedroom in my birth house. My brother was there, who not long had the NES. I had the Gyromite edition with Rob the Robot. And yeah, I got a memory of pointing the zapper gun at the small TV, portable TV. And my mum said, "Wow, look at those graphics." Trust me, the PlayStation 1 absolutely blew her away. So, yeah, Rasp, I was actually, funny enough, playing House of the Dead 2 the other night. Still a good game after all these years, and the Dreamcast port of the arcade original is superb. There's no wonder that the Dreamcast seemed well ahead in its day because it surely was, and some of those Dreamcast games still hold up really well today. Now, talking about Nintendo NES, has anyone here checked out my 3D Zen videos? This is Nintendo NES games done 3D. Absolutely superb. And of course, House of the Dead um, actually got a remaster. The original one, I'm pretty sure it's the original, got a remaster recently, which looks pretty good. They do, and providing you're using something like Redream or Flycast, Dreamcast absolutely looks stunning, and some of the modern games too are looking really nice. On preventing piracy, that type of thing, it's understandable, but I think they're actually giving themselves a bad name. In terms of illegally downloading using Nintendo Switch games, that's one thing, and understand that. But some of the older games from the say the 80s or even early 90s or whatever, I think the way they go around things is a little bit bad. I mean, a lot of these old school games. You literally can't buy anymore. You can't buy them anywhere. The only way you can get those games is buying from dealers who charges a ridiculous amount. So, uh, Yeah, I mean, that type of thing is very contested in people's opinions of what they think about that. Exactly, Shades, and this is exactly how I see what Nintendo do. When they're taking things down off the internet, that type of thing. Most of us are here to relive childhood memories and find new games what we missed as kids. Nintendo are no longer profiting from random games like roller games on Nintendo NES, and if anything, personally, I just think they're giving ourselves a bad name. They're not really doing anything to promote these old games or even accept they got a very rich history of games. Duck Station? Yeah, Nintendo. What was the slogan back in the day? Sega does what Nintendo don't. We're going deep into the old school Sega versus Nintendo war just there. I think there was actually some sort of hack on the Nintendo Wii years ago, and I think it was to play GameCube games on it, and I'm pretty sure the app was called Nintendo. Yeah. Sega do what Nintendo don't. Now, personally, I was a Nintendo boy. Abs- Nintendo was awesome. It was, but I also had love for Sega. So my brother was a Sega person. I was Nintendo. Nintendo, I don't know. Nintendo games just seemed. I think the sound chip in the NES compared to the Master System was miles ahead. Unless you had, I think it was a particular model with the Master System with the FM chip. Apart from that, many games for the Master System didn't support that extra sound chip. So NES games sounded to me a lot nicer, just like Super Nintendo NES sounded a lot nicer than Mega Drive. But really, that's down to preference again. Hey, no night, Darius. Nice chatting to you tonight, and stay retro. That's really cool of you that you joined tonight. So, yeah, I mean, how many of you here was Club Nintendo? And how many of you called that Nintendo hotline for help on your games or to get cheats? It only cost you around $10 per second to call the Nintendo helpline back in the day. Yeah, Rascas, I wouldn't say I was a console hater, and no, I still wouldn't, but my preference is microcomputers. You can do more of a computer. Yeah, some of the console games look superior, some of them, but I just like having a keyboard, a mechanical keyboard, um, as opposed to a console where literally, in the old days, you could literally just plug a cartridge in and that was it. I just like the ideal of microcomputers. Somewhat very nerdy, very British about, say, a ZX Spectrum. Somewhat very nicer, and I just never felt the same way with consoles. Retro game scene in 10 years from now, I'll be honest with you, Rev, I follow the news, latest developments on retro emulation, that type of thing. And my opinion in 10 years from now is that people like ourselves right now are still going to be loving that sense of nostalgia. And, that's obvious. The only thing what's going to happen in 10 years is that dealers selling apparent hidden gems or rare gems, which sold millions of copies back in the day, their prices are going to inflate. I blame some YouTubers for the rise of prices for retro games. I won't say any YouTubers in particular, but uh, I think that's one of the problems where retro collectors, physical collectors, are going to face in 10 years. Most collectors today, they moan about the high prices of games. 10 years down the line, is it going to be even worse? Yeah, you know what? One good thing Rascast is. The era that I'm from, and likely a lot of you is from, is that the systems back then, up until probably around just around the Dreamcast era, were relatively easy to program games for. Hence why you got a lot of homebrew nowadays. Anything from the Xbox onwards, even today, it's going to be a hell of a job later on in life for people to mess around with systems coding like that. It's going to be interesting. So, yeah, very interesting times to come, I think. And exactly, that's why emulation is a thing. So, you get snobs out there, you get people saying, emulation is not good. For example, a little while back, someone on Facebook disliked every Amiga emulation video post I put up. A computer snob, a retro snob. Reason being is that emulation has no place. If you look at the Amiga 500 prices, which used to be one of the cheapest around 20 years ago to buy, if you look at Amiga 500 prices today, good God, man, those things are expensive. And, 20 years ago, the 500 model was literally the cheapest of the bunch. The 1200 model has always been fairly expensive, but so it's not everyone grown-up people in their 40s or 50s who can simply fork out a few £100 for an Amiga 500. And with the Amiga world, obviously you're going to need some extra RAM to go under the trapdoor. You're going to need potentially other bits and pieces to go on the motherboard. It's an expensive job. And as the years roll on, hardware is getting just ridiculously priced. So this is it, Rasp. Is that physical hardware absolutely superb, but it doesn't last forever. Things are going to break over time. I mean, I think people tend to forget that some of these systems are knocking on 40 years old now. Just like any other electronics, wear and tear, especially with electrics, it's not going to last forever. And I think this is where collectors are forgetting things. So you've got really nice websites who reproduces things or new versions of things, but original stuff isn't going to last. Exactly. Now, Reverend, funny enough, I was talking, I'm not sure if you was here earlier on in the stream, but I was talking about um, Pi Amiga. So Pi Amiga, if you had a real Amiga and you wanted that Amiga, likely an Amiga 1200, if you want it to reach those sort of specs, what you can reach on a Raspberry Pi 400, you're probably looking around almost a grand, $1,000, £1,000, if you wanted to match those specs, what a Raspberry Pi 400 could. It's not all of us which can afford that sort of money for a old vintage computer. And yeah, so you've got limitations with playing things on the Raspberry Pi if you're emulating Amiga stuff. But let's be honest, it looks nice, but it's really the games that you're wanting. Uh, you've also got monitors to go with Amiga, which is another thing altogether. Philips produced a really nice monitor, late 80s, early 90s, absolutely superb picture. But if you can get one in working condition, which isn't broken and used by kids years ago, they're so expensive. And, and on top of that, it's just a physical retro collect, and it's absurd. Uh, Shame is that there's plenty of companies out there who could maybe recreate nice, legitimate looking machines, a little bit like Retro Gaming Limited does with the C64 Mini and Maxi and their A500. It's just a shame that is such a niche audience, but I'm hoping over time, younger players will be reverting back to older stuff like this because let's face it, modern games are just so boring. Most of them are, I think anyway. So, Shades, in terms of how expensive Amiga stuff is nowadays, literally, if I just type into eBay, If I put into eBay something like let's look for Amiga 1200, for example. If we take a look for Amiga 1200s, right, this is how pricey the Amiga 1200s are. You've got one just here. It's on £350. This one is got one bid on it, so it's obviously on auction. £350. And if we look at the cosmetics of this machine, it's a later model of the Amiga 500. If we look at the badge just there, the keys are slightly yellowed, and £350. And that's not even ended the reach of the auction yet. I mean, Jesus, man. Let's look at this one just there, £700. Yes, it's got a couple of games with it, and it's got a nice box. But come on, man, £700. It's absolute insanity how much these old systems are going for. So, even as a kid, when I was originally introduced into computing, which was my C64, we had in Britain at the time Commodore Format, which was by Future Publishing, which was based in Bath in England, which actually at the time literally was just up the road from me in Bristol. And I always remember in Commodore Format magazine, Amiga being advertised in there because it was obviously Commodore. And I remember as a kid looking at the prices. Oh, whoa, this is pretty expensive. So yeah, Amiga, things like that's always been expensive, but yeah. So, really, if anyone wants to donate me an Amiga 1200, please feel free to do so. Now, talking about Amiga, talking about Commodore, actually, I was approached a little while ago from a little company called C64X, I believe. And I was promised a new model, a new C64X model with a monitor to go with it. I've not heard back from these people. Now, I've looked into the little company behind this, and apparently it's very shady. Now, I might be wrong or I might be right. I'm not sure. So I'm pretty sure it was Commodore 64X, possibly, something along those lines. I'm not sure if this was one, but there's some company out there which are doing modern day C64s. Like I said, I'm not sure if this was the one, but Summer just didn't seem too right with it from what I've read. So yeah, I mean, Shade, as you know, Commodore uh, is in the branding. It's had a really turbulent history since 1994 when Commodore went. It's changed hands ownership probably 100 times very easily. So all of a sudden we got the 64X, and it's like, whoa, where's your copyright? Where's your trademark and patent? That type of thing. It's yeah, some that don't sit right. And these 64Xs are ridiculously priced, like over a grand or something like that. It is Rascat. It's just a PC. Now the thing is that they're literally using the Commodore 64 slogan, which technically is illegal. That's trademarked. So this is what I mean. The Commodore 64, Commodore Brandon in general, I'm not sure who owns it. Literally, from my knowledge, since Commodore disappeared in '94 after the Amiga CD32 release, it's Commodore, the name for computers, has literally changed hands around 100 times. Um, Around 10 years back, there was also a scam out there, and you can find the video for this on YouTube. I think it was a mobile phone, Commodore branded, and it turned out to be a scam. I think at the time there was actually a Kickstarter for the Commodore Android phone. In fact, let's take a look. I'm pretty sure it's like Commodore 64 phone. Uh, is this the 2015? And this was it. It was actually the Commodore PET phone. Now I looked into this because when I first got news of this Commodore phone, of course, me being me, I was all over it, and I looked into it. And then it soon got forgotten about. Roll on about 9 or 10 years on, and it turns out it was a massive scam which fooled a lot of people at the time who invested into this company, and people did get their orders for this Commodore PET Android phone, but a lot of people didn't. And the people that did get it, apparently, it was just really poorly made. Literally, just with someone putting a stick or a Commodore PET or whatever on the back. So I I've followed Commodore stuff, new developments in Commodore for years, and yeah, I remember that one big scam. The C64 or the 64X looks like a scam, but don't hold me on that. It might be legit, but it looks like a scam to me. And I was so into C64, like I kind of still am. I was actually publishing games myself. Flimsoft. I was working with a coder called Tommy Malinan, um, and we produced a game called Alien Bash 2 together. So I had a website, and I sold a lot of copies of it. Uh, I was in Retro Gamer magazine, which I've always been really chuffed of. In that particular magazine, I've got a picture of myself and my son in there, with a Commodore 64G behind me. Someone asked me earlier on what was my favorite model. So if we take a look, what have we got? Alien Bash 2, guaranteed you'll find information on me. So there we go. Alien Bash 2. That was a game I published under the Flimsoft label. Alien Bash 2 2012. And there we go. There's my old coder, Tommy Malinan, very talented coder. And after Alien Bash 2 came out, I actually did Little Sarah Sister 2 trilogy. And bringing up kids at the time, I had two very young kids at the time. It was a lot of hard work. A lot like Sidetronic Ken's, a lot of the production side in terms of artwork creation, that type of thing, it was very time consuming. So I sort of gave it up. But yeah, Alien Bash 2, if I just click on there, we'll find my label there, Flimsoft. And yeah, it's quite interesting looking back at Alien Bash 2, which was Flimsoft's first game, how many websites it's on and how many times my name is mentioned all over the internet. So, whoa, man, I didn't realize I'm that famous. But Alien Bash 2, very good game, a very hard game, like ridiculously hard. Bit like a Space Invaders clone, because you don't get many Space Invaders clones, not many of those. But the SID programming for Alien Bash 2, the SID chip, the sound Tommy Malinan got out of it was incredible, like really good. So, Alien Bash 2, and towards the end of Flimsoft, I had another game planned for release, which was a Tetris type game. I had an artist actually design a cover for that one, so I didn't do that one myself. A really talented bloke I used to work with, called John, and the game was called Outbreak. Again, if I type into Google Outbreak, it's likely got a demo on there with the Flimsoft name on it. CSDB, which is a great website for C64 stuff. Yeah, 2013 sounds about right. So no, that's the wrong game. Now, the trouble is with microcomputers is that because there's thousands and thousands of games, a lot of games are called the same name. Not intentionally, but well, one of those things. But here's Outbreak, and this is on the very awesome Games That Weren't 64 website, and here it is. So Flimsoft back in 2013. Not a Tetris clone, a Dr. Mario clone, but it plays pretty well. Now, while some on games that weren't 64, you got games that weren't Amiga, and you got several other games that weren't websites. Now, for me, games that weren't 64 is an awesome website. There's a lot of games on there, such as a game I remember playing a demo of as a kid. It was called Fuzzball, and it came on a Commodore format Power Pack tape. Uh, I didn't realize what happened to the game Fuzzball, but in the end, the full version wasn't released. But the Amiga version was, and it wasn't quite the same. If I go to F, we can actually get a full story of why particular games weren't released back in the day. A little bit like Total Recall. Total Recall on the C64 was originally very different to the version we got by Ocean. My favourite Sid's tune. You know what? I I'm gonna say it because nostalgia, and I've got a Flimbo's Quest tattoo on my arm somewhere. There, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's Flimbo holding his scroll. I'm gonna say Boys Without Brains, who designed and coded Flimbo's Quest, just out of nostalgia. But I would say in recent times, there's a game I discovered when I was doing every Ocean release ever video. The game was called, I can't think the name of the game, but it's a very famous Sid uh, Sid musician. I can't think of the name, but it's just can't think of the name of that game. I'm gonna search it up, but it's such an awesome tune. Uh, if I, you know what, Lemon 64 for Commodore 64 people here. Lemon 64 is a quintessential, without a doubt. It's a great website. It's been around for years. If I go to advanced search here and go down to publisher, where's publisher? Company group. If I scroll down and look for Ocean, the game I'm talking about, one of my favorite Sid tunes, was by Ocean. And like I said, I can't think for the life of me what that game was called. Uh, where are we? Ocean, Ocean, Ocean. Obviously, Manchester based, proud to be British moment, but a long time ago. And let's not forget Ocean's Dennis game, which was just diabolical in every way, really. Okay, Ocean, search games, and if I see the game, I'll instantly tell you what it was. Guts, that's the one. So, to the person that asked me my favourite Sid tune, that's it. And you know what? Game Loader, Ocean Game Loader, there's a couple of versions of that, but the Rob Hubbard, absolutely incredible music. You know, there's something very special to me there is, and probably to you as well. C64 sounds to a person that didn't grow up with it, it's literally just a noise. My partner says it pretty much, you know, it sounds like a noise. But to us, wow, you know, some of that stuff just blows you away. Now, if you're not familiar with Guts, the gameplay is pretty mediocre. It's nothing special. But the sound in it, who was by the Sid musician, was Fred Gray. When I was doing my Ocean C64 games, I found the name Fred Gray appear a hell of a lot. And just like Rob Hubbard, he did a lot of really awesome music. And there's a reason why Sid musicians like Fred Gray, Rob Hubbard, have still got a name for themselves. So yeah, C64 Guts music. So that's one. No, the level music, which is the really awesome. Hello, Mark. So you know that's one thing. Copyrighted. You know what, Shade? There's not much of the Commodore 64 music which gives you copyrights for. One of them, which is copyrighted, which I had issues with in the past when I was doing my Ocean video, was One Man and His Droids. That was one which you can't play that on YouTube without getting copyrighted for that. Uh, so I said to my partner actually a while back about there's actually synth musicians out there, and whether you like it or not, the C64 had a synthesizer chip in it. And originally it was actually meant to be a lot better than what it turned out to be, but the people that designed the SID chip were on the time limit for the release of the C64 in 1982. So, yeah. Yeah, Shade. Yeah, I'm aware of that. It can YouTube copyrights, fair enough. But if it was One Man and His Droid, then I wouldn't be playing it. But Guts, man, what a tune! So, yes, really, some of the best music for me out there personally is by far Commodore 64 music. Just absolutely superb. It's got four channels of music, weird modulation sounds and stuff. Just absolutely awesome. I don't think there's anything been like it since. Every Ocean game, the loader. Uh, Not sure, Mark, what you mean by that, but obviously Ocean Loader music is very popular between people my age and maybe if you're a bit older. Most Ocean games, if not all of them, had a loading picture with some real awesome music. One of them I remember being very fond of was the C64 RoboCop loader music in even sometimes I still get the sound of these old tunes in my head just randomly because holds very good memories and they're just really great sound. Pretty sure it's Robocop. It's either this one or Rastan. And of course, you also got Martin Galway as well, who also did some really awesome music for the C64. Yeah, so it was this Ocean Loader that I loved as a kid. And of course, Batman the movie by Ocean also had the same loading sound as this one. You know what? I think tonight I should have actually called this the Commodore 64 superior than any other microcomputer stream video or whatever. Yeah, Daley Thompson. You know what? Daley Thompson, I remember I didn't have it as a kid, and it's not really my type of thing, but I know Daley Thompson Olympic Challenge, and the other Daley Thompson game is Button Breakers, proper full on button bashing games. But yeah, again, Daley Thompson Olympic Challenge, and there was also another Daley Thompson game, and I can't think the name of it, also by Ocean. Uh, I'm not a sports fan, so as a kid, I didn't really have any desire to play any sport or Olympic type games. But I do know the notorious history of breaking joysticks with those games. Yeah, the joystick breaker. there. Now the question is, did Daley Thompson really use that much energy during the Olympic Games years ago in the 80s? Apparently, Daley Thompson was on drugs to enhance his ability to run. So, super test. Yeah, Daley Thompson super test. One of them from when I was still in the ocean video, one of them was very good, and the other one wasn't as good. And that's just going by general reviews on Olympic Challenge and Super Test and Decathlon. Yeah. So Daley Thompson, obviously a very big part of the 80s, and he was obviously very big at the time to have Ocean, out of all publishers, do a few games. Obviously, during that decades, the 80s, there were so many publishers, loads, Firebird, Ocean, obviously, Masteronic, Virgin, loads. And then you also got all your really obscure ones, which literally published a couple of games, then totally forgotten about. But really, anyone talk about Commodore to me, especially Commodore 64, and you'll get me talking for hours on end about things. So it's not wise to talk about Commodore 64 to me. It really isn't. I do it to my son. I give him like a fatherly lecture about the old days, and Commodore comes up now and again, and he's like, Dad, shut up, man. It's like, no, man, that's the way to go. Commodore 64. I said to him the other day, I goes, you bought a Commodore 64 yet? And he just laughs it off with me. So I don't know where to get one. Is like, yeah, no kid's going to want to see 64, I don't think. But you can try. Action Biker music. Action Biker, wasn't that a Masteronic game? Wrote in one night. Sort of reminds me of the story behind the Atari 2600 ET game. It was written, I think ET on the 2600 was written in a couple of weeks or a month at max. Steven Spielberg actually said it was a great game, and it caused a major issue with the console gaming industry at the time. What's it? The game crash in 1984? Was it 1984, 1985? Yeah. So, like I say, Mark, is that I'm not really a sports person, not my cup of tea. Rob Hubbard, legend. Uh, yeah, sports games has never been my cup of tea, but I did when I was doing the Ocean video, I did play some football games, and some of them was just absolutely like shocking. Not my cup of tea anyway, but some of them in particular really was truly atrocious. And of course, this was the era where publishers were releasing clearly broken games and still selling them anyway. Something like RoboCop. As a kid, playing RoboCop, I got to the drug factory, which is obviously from the original 1987 RoboCop film. Got to the drug factory, got a 2 minute limit to get from one end of the stage to the other. You clearly can't do it. There's a wall put in place. Right at the last minute, the devs behind the game at Ocean, they realised that they didn't have enough time, so they put a wall in place so you couldn't see the rest of the game, and it was impossible. Later on in life, I realised I wasn't the only one with that issue. You also got Rastan as well for the C64, which is clearly another Broken Ocean game. The rope level. If any of you here has played Rastan on C64, the rope level was hell, absolute hell. So clearly, Robocop and Rastan were two broken games. So, yeah, the thing is with mini consoles is that we had a little boom with mini consoles, and I'm pretty sure the last big one was the PS Classic, the PlayStation Mini Classic, whatever it's called. It had a really bad reception because most games people were expecting to be on it wasn't on it. Actually, talking about the PS Classic, one of my favorite YouTubers, Metal Jesus Rocks. Metal Jesus Rocks, absolutely superb. I love that channel. He did a little video a little while back on a couple of USB drives for the PS Classic. One of the USB drives come in a box called Crack, and the other box he had came with the name of something more drug related or some sort of street drug name. And he said in a video on this little review he did that he's actually surprised that he actually received them at all because they come from somewhere like China to Seattle in America where he lives. And he was surprised he actually got through customs with names they had. Honestly, if you've not seen that Metal Jesus Rocks video, I'll try it for you now. Now, if you look at my history just here, you're going to find someone else I watch on YouTube. This is Rate My Takeaway. My takeaway is this man just here. I call him the Sheffield man because I think he's from Sheffield or Leeds. And he goes around eating junk foods, and he's just a really great YouTuber, really entertaining. Although my partner's cousin didn't think that the other day when he watched Rate My Takeaway. Very uncool stuff, I think. Uh, Anyways, Metal Jesus Rocks. It was PlayStation Mini. Let's have a look what comes up. But if I find it, you've seriously got to watch. Uh, that's the one. I bought meth, weed, and crack from China. Yes, that's what it's called, right? I'm going to link this.
Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and occasionally.
Right, seriously, I'm going to link this Metal Jesus Rocks video just here. And this episode is hilarious. Hey guys, Metal Jesus Rocks here. I recently bought uh, crack, weed, and oh, it's just so funny. Yeah, you know what, Mark? Ultimate Software, it was a little bit before its time. Sorry, for my time. So obviously, Ultimate Software was sort of, I suppose, the beginnings of the 80s. Ultimate Software played a game was then turned into Rare. I'm pretty sure it's rare. And that's why nowadays you can get Ultimate games for Xbox, or at least during the 360 era, you had games on there from Ultimate Play the Game. And years ago, I actually had a friend at the time who opened up a game shop, which, to be honest, it wouldn't greatly maintained and it didn't last too long, but he actually called it Ultimately Rare. So we used the name, the original name, Ultimate, plus put Rare on the end. So yeah. Yeah, you know the to me the C64 Maxi is probably the best modern day 64 you'll get. Obviously, it's not the original hardware, and obviously it's an emulated system with emulated SID sound, but uh, it's nice to have original hardware. Of course, it is, but really, like I say, 1982 hardware, it's gonna conk out at some point, and you know, on the C64 Maxi, which I've got, it's got full working keyboards, which actually feels like a real bread bin. So, yeah, I'm quite happy with that one. I've had it a long time. I actually had that for my 40th birthday, just before my 40th. So, epic, mammoth part of my history for my 40th birthday. I had a Commodore, almost. So, anyways, let's try and get off topic with random stuff like Commodore 64. Well, it's not random, but it's me. I just go on about Commodore a lot. So, let's talk about just Jamie. What are we going to do about setup guides? What is it people's wanting from the channel? So, what I'm going to do, I've been chatting on and on and on for around an hour now. To be honest, my mouth is extremely dry. I need a drink. And I need a drink. So what I'm going to do is literally just leave you all there for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And what I want is people to start telling me what it is you want as setup guides or even content on my channel. So I'll be back in a minute. Bear with me. Okay, so I'm back in randomly. I've got in my head, it's back bigger and better than ever. Um, I'm talking about RoboCop, the film, the car in it. I think the name of the car. Gone. 6,000 SUS or something like that. If we got RoboCop fans, yeah, it's back. It's back, better than ever or something. Okay, what have we got? Actually, my son was talking about AMD a little while back and their Ryzen processors. They're not actually bad, but me personally, Intel sucks. I don't know. I've always looked at AMD and Intel a little bit like the old Sega Nintendo war or the Spectrum and Commodore war. That's how I look at AMD and Intel. But fair enough. Intel, they, you know, historically, AMD were known for gaming years ago. Intel, not so much, but I've got a new Intel CPU here. I've got a Core i7. I think it's 11th gen, 10th, 11th gen, and it suits me just well. But AMD Ryzen's in particular models, has obviously got a GPU built into the chip itself, which is in some ways pretty good from what I've seen. I've got an i7. If that's Yeah, you know what the problem is with CPUs buying them separately is they're so expensive. I was in a place, a lot of you here has probably heard of it. I was in a place called CEX the other day for British people here. I'm not sure if you got them elsewhere in the world, but I was looking at a chip in there and it was an Intel and it was something like £400 and that's pre-owned and they're not really the cheapest things to buy. Uh, yeah. So loads of different models, and I'm trying to explain to my son. Actually, obviously he's taken after me in many ways, being a nerd pretty much, which I'm really chuffed of. But a nerd with attitude. I say to him, the world of computing and hardware buying is a minefield. You'll get a lot of false information, misguided information, and you're left in this little place of it's like oh my God, what is it? Which model do I want for gaming? That type of thing. Uh, so yeah, if you're new to computing, CPUs and even GPUs, it's hell. And as a kid of this age, 13, even understanding RAM, obviously you've got DDR2, DDR3, DDR4, DDR5. Even that to a kid, if you're not used to it, can be really confusing itself. So the way I explain it, normally, the higher the number, probably the better. But even that is contested in the computing world because the higher the number isn't always the most accurate way to find out if it's better. 460 16 gigabyte GPU. Wow, 16 gigabyte. Back in the day when I started off in computing in a big way, It was the release of Far Cry on PC. This is going back to the Windows XP era, I think it was. And back then, graphics cards, GPUs, were around what 512 megabyte of video RAM. And nowadays, you can get video RAM of something stupid like 32 gigabyte plus. It's just insane. So emulation in VR again, just like light guns. I bring my son into it again. My son, he's a big VR fan, and actually earlier on today we was talking about MetaQuest. Is it MetaQuest? MetaQuest 2. And last time I seen him, had let me have a little go on it, and I love the idea of VR ever since the PSVR came out. Obviously, you had things before that, Voodoo, 3D FX, old school. Um, yeah, but the trouble is, virtual reality headsets are awesome, but some people like myself makes us really ill. Uh, so yeah, good inventions, and they're really good compared to what they once was back in the day. But yeah. But yeah, going back to Far Cry, that game blew me away. If anyone here remembers Far Cry on PC, we're not talking the Xbox 360 Far Cry, the original Far Cry. I think it was 2004, 2005. Around the time my nan died, and at that point I had a lot of will money, and I bought myself what was at the time one of the best computers, which was a HP, I think it was. And one of the latest releases out for PC, when you could actually buy physical PC media discs, was Far Cry, and the game looked gorgeous, and it still does. And I was hooked on that game, literally hooked on it. Quite literally, the only game I was very happy to spend hours online playing with other people. I got so good at it, I was going against myself, going against teams. What are they, clans? And I knew all their hiding places and stuff. I played Far Cry on PC religiously, and I did for at least a year or two. So PSVR 2 will be compatible with PC. I'm not sure. We looked at the PSVR 2. Can see it's very extortionate. And actually, going back to my son again, like I was saying, he's a big VR fan. He actually told me earlier on that Steam has actually got a Steam index known as, yeah, the Steam, or is it the Valve Index? Valve Index, I think it was called, which is Valve Index, I think it was, which is actually new on me because it makes me ill. 3D stuff, virtual reality stuff. I don't really look into that world, but I looked at this earlier on. It's like, whoa, look at these prices. But yeah, this is what he wants at the moment, and I'm sure it's amazing, but it's a lot of money, and yeah, it would be handy. I mean, Mark, with PlayStation games, is that it's more common nowadays for PlayStation games exclusives to be ported to Windows. I think we recently got a release of a PlayStation 4 exclusive. Recently, I can't think which game it was, but there was one. Now, sadly for Bloodborne fans, that one's yet to be ported to PC, which is irritating a lot of people. And talking about PlayStation and PS4, Oculus Rift 2. I think Oculus Rift, if I remember correctly, that was actually but a thing before the PSVR. Forget about Oculus Rift, actually. PC building. Um, yeah, so this is the Valve Index. Like I said, because I don't follow that virtual reality world, I get asked now and again, about emulation on headsets like this one. And yeah, honestly, I know there's things going on for headsets like this, but it's not something I do or likely ever going to do. But emulation wise, yeah, there is projects going on for headsets without a doubt. Okay, so that's a good bit of feedback actually, Rascast. I have an index, have for about 3 years now. It's good, but getting a bit old. I'll actually relay that to my son when I next talk to him, probably tomorrow, maybe. Like I said, absolutely new on me, never heard of it before tonight. But I also explained to him earlier on that, especially nowadays, technology moves so quickly, it's very easy to get lost. And just like TVs, recently we bought a new TV, and all of a sudden, you've got QLED. Was it QLED? OLED? But even the world of TVs, it's like the enhancements you get on TVs compared to just 2 years alone, massively quick nowadays. Things are very quickly changing in technology, and things are outdated very quickly. A little bit like the Steam Deck. It don't even out a couple of years, and all of a sudden you've got the new model out pretty much. But I suppose, even in the old days, early 80s, you had lots of competitors, competing against the big giants of the day like Commodore in Sinclair. So it's always going to be a big war in technology with someone outdoing someone. Now, Reverend, I said earlier on Reverend rather than Rev D, Reverend, I like the sound of that. Virtual reality, awesome, very awesome. Really, the only experience I've got with virtual reality myself is the PSVR. Now, the original, obviously, is pretty old, but at the time, it was amazing. Only it did make me ill, and I did my best to take away that illness, but I couldn't do it. But my son let me have a go on his Oculus. Oculus? No, it's got a Quest. Look, like I say, I'm really inexperienced with VR headsets, but for about 30 seconds, I could see that the Meta Quest 2 we had was superior to the original PSVR. So uh, today, with things like Valve Index and new things coming out, the quality of them would likely be very crisp, very clear. That's what I'd say. But I'd also say for people who's not actually checked out virtual reality, it's a lot of money to spend if you're potentially going to be ill playing the VR games. And there's a lot of people out there which do get motion sickness big time, like myself. Yeah, the last time I used a PSVR was shortly before I moved from Bristol up north, and I bought a PSVR fairly cheap up here. And at the time, a few years ago, I played one of the latest VR games, and I handled it for around a minute, and I thought, no, man, I can't do this. So, like I said, in terms of VR, I'm not the best person to speak to, but I will say most VR headsets are very expensive if potentially it's going to make you ill. And like I said, I did it with PSVR years ago. And when I moved up north of England, I bought another one just to give it another go. And no, I can't get on with them at all. So yeah, the trouble with headsets is that they're not the type of things I don't think you can go into a shop and try one to see if you suffer with motion sickness. So really, it's a case of maybe just buying one and hoping for the best, literally. Yeah, so obviously you don't have to buy things new. You've got things like eBay, and obviously you can actually buy new things on eBay as well as pre-owned. So yeah, most of the time you'll get some cheaper stuff on Amazon, sometimes eBay. PSVR, so if anyone wants to test out virtual reality and you happen to have a PS4, the original PSVR headsets are fairly cheap today. There's a local trading shop, pawn shop, we'll say, round the corner. They had a camera and a headset, the original PSVR, for around, I think it was some at 60 or £70. So fairly cheap today. Obviously, it's older, but it might give people an insight before you go out forking a ridiculous amount for something brand new. So, anyways, I'm going to wrap this up fairly soon. Yeah, exactly, Mark. 100 quid. So I seen the camera and the headset for around £78, I think it was. So likely then 100 quid max. So it's not a bad way to test out if you've got the heads for headsets like that. Yeah, it's I'm really gutted actually because the PSVR 2 came out and it's got a virtual reality Horizon game which I really want to play. And it's like there's no point. It's going to cost £400 or £500 at least for a PSVR 2. Partner's got a PS5, but besides the point, even if I could afford it, got to pay for the game, and at the end of the day, it's going to make me ill. So what is the point? I have a story about PSVR. I was trying it out to see if it was good and playing a game. When I finished, the guy took off me, and that guy was Jeff Minter. Whoa, where was this? In this country, I'd imagine somewhere. So Jeff Minter, for people that don't know who Jeff Minter is, a ZX Spectrum coder from back in the day, very old school. A bit like royalty, I suppose, of the coding world. Pretty sure Jeff Minter he did the sheep games, those really weird acid trippy sheep games. Can't think what they're called. Manchester Game Show. Yeah, that sounds about right then. Just trying to think what is Jeff Minter did. Sheep in Space, I think one of his games was one of the most famous ones. Yeah, Jeff Minter, he also randomly did a game for the Atari Jaguar as well, or Jaguar, which was Tempest 2000, I believe. Lammers, that's it. Yeah, a bit of an oddball Jeff Minter, but absolutely talented, like you wouldn't believe. So, for those who's not sure of Jeff Minter's work, this is Jeff Minter. Really awesome bloke, and I'm not sure where he's from. He's obviously in the UK somewhere. Probably not far from Manchester, I guess. And yes, Lamasoft. And back in the day, Jeff would do these really obscure lamb games like Attack of the Mutant Camels, which was actually a game I played as a kid. And even back then, I thought this is pretty weird. So yeah, Jeff Minter games in the old days, absolutely. It was like he was putting you onto his acid trip. You didn't need to take anything; he was there with it. Now, for those who might have missed it, there was actually a very cool film, couple of films actually. There was a documentary film and it actually had Jeff Minter in it, and it was looking at computers in the 80s in gaming industry. Can't think what it's called. It was something the Amiga years. So yeah, Ocean Software come from Manchester, and to be honest with you, I've wanted to go to Manchester for a while. For some reason, back in the 90s, I was an Oasis fan. Can't really say much about Oasis anymore. I'm not a big fan anymore. But back in the day, it was in Britain at least. It was Oasis and Blur. You was either a Blur fan, I suppose, or Oasis. And to me, back then, Oasis they had a bit more of a Sex Pistols sort of Johnny Rotten type attitude about them, and that's what I liked. I like, still do. I like kind of rough and raw music and rock music, rough and straight to the point. Whereas I found Blur a little bit goody two shoes, you know. So yeah, so obviously Manchester, if anyone's into music here, Manchester was an absolute powerhouse for music in even the 80s. In 90s, obviously we had Joy Division in the late 70s from Manchulian Land. He went on to become New Order after Ian Curtis killed himself. You got Factory Records as well in Manchester. So yeah, very good history for the music industry in Manchester. Micromen. So yeah, it wasn't Micromen I was referring to, but if you've not seen Micromen, that film or sort of biofilm, whatever you call it, docudrama, is a must for anyone who's not seen it. It's Micromen is about Clive Sinclair and I can't think of his name is associate at the time. Chris Curry, I think his name was. And pretty much Micromen is about the rise of Sinclair Research and Acorn Computers. Obviously, you've got the BBC Micro, which was by Acorn. Uh, and the bloke it plays, Clive Sinclair, he's a known comedian. I can't think what his name was, but he did Clive Sinclair so well. And there's a point in that film where it's Clive Sinclair. I'm not sure how accurate it was to real life, but Clive Sinclair didn't like the idea of his ZX Spectrum computers being dominated with games. And there's a point in it when he's talking to Chris Curry, Jet Set fucking Willie. Brilliant stuff. So, Micromen, if no one's watched it, seriously watch it. I'm sure the entire film is on YouTube. Yeah, so Electron. So let's see, the Electron, Acorn Electron, that was the cut down version of the BBC, I suppose, the Micro Model B. And you know, with the Electron, you had all the expansions you could put onto it and pretty much turn that thing into a Model B. And then obviously after that, you had the Acorn Archimedes, however you pronounce it, which tried rivaling the Amiga and the ST at the time, but it just didn't do it. And not many people, in fact, I didn't know anyone back in the day, actually owned one of those Archimedes. Yeah, so it was based on the ARM processor, which is still used today in phones, I believe. I'm pretty sure the Raspberry Pi computer is actually based around the ARM processor. And of course, all this came from um, Acorn, I believe, from research reading I've seen. So yeah, so although Acorn Computers hasn't got a big history like Commodore for nostalgia or whatever, the ARM processor itself is still used today, all this time later, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so I did any retrobat users here actually did a retrobat setup guide for Archimedes. And from what I've seen of it, it wasn't actually a bad platform. One of the games I tested on it at the time was James Pond. And I think the sound of it in the gameplay, the visuals, was pretty much on par with the Amiga version of James Pond. So the Archimedes, from what I've seen of it, was very good. I think it just came out a little later after Amiga already established his fan base, and I think it kind of got left behind that way. And then, of course, you had all your consoles at the time coming out. So, really, early 90s, most kids of that 80s thing, microcomputers, wanted consoles. A Commodore HQ is now QVC. Is it really? So, QVC you see on TV, seriously, that was actually the original Commodore in America. Pi 4 run this emulator. Are you talking, George Carr? Are you talking about the Archimedes? So, I'm actually surprised QVC is still a thing, but I know it is still a thing, and it's worrying that people are buying the trash what they sell on there. Maybe it's a bit more classy today, but in the early 2000s, when you got full exposure of QVC from digital boxes, I seen it on and off. Some of the stuff they were selling was just overpriced rubbish. So yeah, I've seen footage of the Commodore building. Commodore UK HQ is QVC. I see what you mean. Okay. Oh, so somebody here wants to know if a Pi 4 will run the Dolphin emulator. I'm pretty sure it does. So you can run that through. It depends really what you're running on your Raspberry Pi. Are you using an operating system or using some like Retro Pi? Now, I'm pretty sure the Raspberry Pi 4 will run GameCube. If you've got the 4 GB Raspberry Pi 4, it will likely be very choppy or might not run at all. If you've got the 8 GB Pi 4 model, then it will likely obviously run a lot smoother. Um, I've not actually used RetroPie for a while. So yeah, of course, we got the Raspberry Pi 5 now, and I was saying earlier on the stream, I've not really looked at it much, to be honest, because I'm quite happy with my Pi 400. So you're using Batocera on the Raspberry Pi 4. If it's got a GameCube folder in it, let's see, if you press F1, obviously to go into your area where you can put your games into, if you see a GameCube folder, it will work. If you don't see a GameCube folder, then obviously the Pi 4 won't support it. So Batocera didn't bother putting a GameCube folder in there. You know what? Just out of curiosity, let's have a quick little look. So we got the Pi 4, Batocera. I'm not sure if I can get a list here what that actually supports. Obviously, each version of Batocera is going to have different supported systems. So, yeah, for example, if I run Batocera on a PC, it might be a lot different, or it will be a lot different to the Pi version. So, let's have a look. Okay, so at the top just here we got Pi 4. And you know what? Odroid are very good computers. Really competes really easily with the Raspberry Pi computers. The ones of Odroid I recommended a few years ago easily was the XU4. What a powerhouse that was! Really, really good micros. So, anyways, Raspberry Pi 4. We're looking for GameCube. Let's take a scroll down. Nintendo. It doesn't. I might not be seeing it. But I can't see Nintendo GameCube at all. Nintendo, maybe it's under G for. Oh, there we go. Okay, so for the Raspberry Pi 4, no, no, you can't. By the looks of it, Raspberry Pi 4 doesn't support GameCube Dolphin. So you're out of luck with that. Now, if you wanted to emulate GameCube. I'm not sure what I'm looking at. What I'm going to do actually is, if you're really that interested in Pi 4 and GameCube, just follow that link just there, and that'll help you out. Yeah, I've read bits and pieces of Orange Pi over the last couple of years, and it's not something I've ever bought, but I know of it, and yeah. So yeah, Raspberry Pi 4, it plays PS2. I think I tried it on my Pi 400, but yeah, very choppy, and some games didn't boot if memory serves me. Not heard of Ryu. There's obviously Ryu Jinx, and from the seams of it, that's a very good emulator. I think I covered that one for retrobat, and I'm pretty sure it's pretty good. But anyways, what I'm gonna do now is just give anyone here the opportunity just to suggest any setup guides. I'm gonna be off in about 5 minutes because I've been rambling on now for God knows how long. My missus is in the background. I'm probably giving her a headache, and I'm giving myself a headache talking so much, drying my mouth out. So, if anyone's got any video guides you want me to do, let me know. Sue you. Yeah, covered that for Retrobat a few weeks ago. So, what I'm going to do is, yeah, give everyone the opportunity now to suggest setup guides, content you want me to do. And I'm going to put it again, but if anyone wants to support my channel, whoops, where are we? If anyone wants to support my channel, I'm always grateful of donations. It helps me buy things for my channel and things like that. It just spurs me on. So please, 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 You can send donations to support my channel right just there to that PayPal. And really, I'm really grateful for anything that gets sent. It's very awesome stuff. Okay, Alex, good to see you again. So it looks like you might have just joined. I've literally been streaming for quite a long time, about an hour and a half, I think, and my mouth is totally dried out. Uh, so it's nice to see you here. As always, if you want to listen back to the stream, listen back to it. It's going to be on my channel, so you can listen back. Mainly, we've been talking about random stuff, Commodore stuff, nerdy stuff from the 80s, ZX Spectrum. Even Clive Sinclair has been talked about. Lots have been talked about. Future pinball tutorials. Now, funny enough, Mark, I've actually got that one on my to-do list. So I did visual pinball the other day as a standalone. If you've not watched visual pinball, bear with me. I'll get you a direct link to visual pinball. Bear with me. Uh, Okay, so the link I'm about to just paste in there, that's Visual Pinball. If you want to set up Visual Pinball for retrobat, in the description of that link I just sent, you've got a link inside of that one for retrobat. In terms of future pinball, was it future pinball? I was just asked. Yeah, future pinball. So already I've covered that for retrobat, but it's on my to-do list fairly soon to do that as a standalone as well. And eventually, I'm going to be doing pinball setup guides for things like batocera if I can, and launchbox. Maybe some help with installing the top tables. How do you mean by? Do you mean cocktail tables, arcade tables? Is that what you mean by top tables? If you want to set up some sort of cocktail table cabinet where you're looking down on the screen where you need your display vertical, I actually did a setup guide for GameX Arcade Edition a couple of days ago. So if that's what you're trying to achieve, watch that video. And GameX is a very good front end for that type of cabinet. And talking about pinballs, now, of course, you can emulate pinballs using one screen, but most people have several screens. And obviously, I'm limited because I'm literally using one screen and it's just a general pinball setup. Um, yeah, but yeah, some of the setups, pinball tables you can get to emulate, absolutely superb. Really cool stuff. So, in the world of pinball emulation, of course, you've got Visual Pinball, which uses .vpx files. But for pinball people out there, watch Visual Pinball Setup Guide I did, and there's a bit more to it than that. You also got Pinball FX2 and FX3, I think, and you've also got Future Pinball. Now, in the background of all this, you've also got something called Pinup Popper, which is the integration of a couple of different emulators, so I believe, where you can use Pinup Popper as kind of like a way to play both at once. But I've not really explored that yet, but I know of it. So, anyways, what I'm going to do now is love you and leave you all. And think I'm going to be off. Like I said, I've been chatting for a long time and I got to drive through. So, like I say, please, 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 if anyone wants to support the channel, please donate. I'm always grateful. Oh, that's okay, Rascas. I enjoy doing it and, I'd like to stay longer, but thanks. I really appreciate that. Um, No worries, Alex. I tell you what, before I go, if anyone I've already sent a link to that. What's that link I just sent? Already sent the link, the last link I sent there. If anyone wants to check out the Visual Pinball emulator, It's in the link just there I've sent, so check that out. It's very cool, like really cool. So really, I'm gonna be off. If anyone wants to support me, please use the PayPal. And I'll be uploading a video tomorrow, knowing me, because that's what I do. So anyways, until next time, thanks for everyone watching and stay retro.